Hi everyone, this is Tanner. Welcome to another NFL podcast. Today I have a very fun topic is I want to talk about where I think each NFL team should go this offseason, the direction that they should take here. And the way I'm going to do this is sort these teams into tiers. As you can see, we have kind of from red to green. Red is more cautious, which just continue to build up the team. Sure, these teams are going to draft and make moves, but I think more so establish the culture. Then you have make your money in the draft. These are teams I really think a lot of the core focus in the offseason needs to be the draft. Then we have go for it if it's right. I think these are teams that are very solid. And if the price is right, hey, make that move. But if not, kind of just continue where things are. And then we have go big or go home. And the way I have this sorted is by division here. So I have the West divisions, the North, the East, and the South here. So I actually start with the NFC and AFC West. And a very nice looking graphic because I have two teams in each tier. And let's begin here with go big or go home, where I have the Rams and the Chiefs. In terms of the things for the Chiefs, I think that this season was a bit of a wake up call for Kansas City, right? You've had a lot of success the past couple seasons with going to Super Bowls and whatnot. And it felt like this year where, yes, you do have the Mahomes injury, but before that, they were not winning a ton of games. That success wasn't there. You had the Broncos in your own division win, the division, be the number one seed in the AFC. It feels like there's a bit more of a timer in Kansas City here. Patrick Mahomes, I believe, is going to be 31, which is crazy. But, Mahomes, yes, he's a very smart quarterback. He has great IQ, but a large part of his game is that physicalness, that ability to throw a deep scramble. So if he regresses, say about age 35, 36, you only have about a couple of years left. How long does Andy Reid continue to coach, right? He could probably coach for 10 more years, but, where does that land? So just a lot more kind of questions with the Chiefs, and that's why I think they're in this tier. Go big or go home. And I think that's really where this team's at. I think the past couple years, when they won the Super Bowls in 22 and 23, I liked how they built up, kind of through the draft and free agency. They traded away Tyreek Hill, and they did some good stuff winning those games. Getting the two championships. But I really think you have to be in a very competitive AFC. Be more aggressive here, right? So that's why I have them at. In terms of who should I go for, who I think they should go for, I think they should look at for an edge rusher or a running back. Jeremiah Love, the NFL prospect, is really getting touted there, and that would be a go big to draft a running back round one early. Also, think if there's an edge on the market that you want to trade for, you can try to go ahead and see. But yeah, I think the Chiefs are in this kind of territory where you know things are now kind of in. I don't know if the words crunch time, but we'll kind of see where the Chiefs are. Right? They've had a really good history so far in the Mahomes era, and how does that continue? And I think it depends on how they do here. And I have the LA Rams, very similar here to the Chiefs. This team's seen a lot of success. They've won a Super Bowl in 2021. They've had, been in the playoffs so many times. They were just in the NFC title game here. My thing with the Rams here is that you just don't know about Matthew Stafford. I think, he's coming back for sure. We know that. But the MVP of the league, how many years does he have left? And I just think this team has been so aggressive in the Sean McVay era. Whether it be, look at the early years when they got, Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters in here. They brought in, Von Miller in 2021. They traded for Jalen Ramsey. This team has been aggressive, and I like it. And I think that's been the Rams' strategy. That's something that they've held true to themselves. And I think you keep doing that here as long as Matthew Stafford is here. You just try to get another ring. And I really just do like that idea. I think that's something that would make sense for this team. And go ahead and do it if you're LA. Then you have go for it if it's right. I have the 49ers and the Broncos. In terms of things kind of with Denver here, I think it's just a very well built team. You have an established defense with superstar cornerback Patrick Surtain, a great edge rushing duo with Benito and Cooper. I do like this offense. I think Bo Nix runs it well. I do think that you have good receiving talent, though it could be better. But like if the Broncos go back next season and they just run it back, this is probably an 11-win team. This is probably a team that gets to the playoffs again and could win a Super Bowl. They were close this year. They're in an AFC title game, and I think just Sean Payton and the Broncos, they're a team that I think just the more they spend time, it'll gel well. Now, that to say, if a receiver becomes available, if a playmaker becomes available, that it really gets interesting, right? Maybe Jalen Waddle with the Dolphins, if they look to ship him or whatnot. If something happens with Garrett Wilson and the Jets, who knows with that. But if there's a really good receiver that becomes available, I would look to maybe go and get him, right, and bring him in because I love Cortland Sutton, right? I think he's a really good really good receiver, and I think the Broncos' offense is pretty good. But maybe that name could be nice to have that big time receiver as well. But yeah, Broncos. We'll see where this team goes, right? I think this team just had a really nice season. I think they're building up, right? 2024, they win 9 or 10 games. They lose in a wild card this past year. They're the number one seed in the AFC. They win a playoff game against the Bills. We've seen progression every year. So you're steady, you're doing well, and I just think you kind of keep it there unless something opens. And very similar to the Niners here. Now there's a bit more maybe inconsistency, unsureness with the Niners here. Brandon Ayuk might leave. What do things look like with George Kittle off the ACL, whatnot? I do get that here. I do think if there's a position that opens up, hey, we can go for it, right? You look at when this team traded for Christian McCaffrey back in 2022 was that? Yeah, 2022. That was something that they saw the opportunity and took it. So if a playmaker becomes open and you like it, and you say, hey, we have, the pieces and the draft capital, go ahead and do it here. But if not, you have Kyle Shanahan, who's a great coach. I think Brock Purdy is a really good quarterback. I think you have enough pieces where, if you can just kind of be a pretty good team as is. I think it's just getting healthy. And that's the main thing with the Niners. I mean, the main storyline with this team is that they were just so injured. Last year, right? You had Fred Warner, Nick Bosa missed time. You have Ricky Pearsall, the receiver, who I really like. He missed, time. So a fully healthy Niners team, I think, could be really good. I think the Niners and Broncos are very similar to one another. I think they're very talented. This could be our next Super Bowl. That wouldn't shock me at all. But they just kind of got bit by the injury bug. And then next up, we have the Cardinals and the Raiders making money in the draft. I very much kind of have different approaches to how I think these teams should approach said draft. Both of them have a new head coach, right? Both of them are kind of the worst teams in in their divisions. The Cardinals, for me, I think is just best player available, right? Whoever that may be, take them, right? I think this team has some good established pieces, but I think you just need a couple more guys. I think you have a great tight end Trey McBride, a good tackle Paris Johnson, Michael Wilson receiver, I like Will Johnson at corner, Buda Baker at safety. I think Walter Nolan's a good defensive tackle. So you have like maybe 6, 7 guys who I think you can say, hey, that's who we like on the Cardinals. But you just get more of those guys, and that's both offense and defense. I think you can make an argument. I think Josh Sweat as well is another established guy as rusher. But if you wanted to go offensive tackle, corner, you know, maybe quarterback if there's one you like, maybe, a defensive back, maybe an edge here, you could just go with so many positions, and it could be, I think, all very valid. I think Arizona is going to be in a transition year, and I think that makes sense. In the NFC West, the Niners, Rams, Seahawks all made the, playoffs. Two of them play each other in the NFC title game, right? This is a very strong division, so I think it's okay if you take a year to just kind of take best player available. And I think Mike LaFleur is just going to kind of need a year to get things established in terms of what should he do for quarterback, because I know a lot of people are going to be asking me about that. There are rumors that I like Malik Willis a lot. Listen, I like Malik Willis too. I think he's a good scrambler. I think he can get the ball out quickly. I think he's someone that can attack all the areas of the field pretty well, especially in a kind of middle and short game. I just think for me, I think they move on from Kyle Murray. I think you go ahead, you give Jacoby Brissett another year, you maybe draft a rookie. But I really think what you do with Arizona is go best player available in the draft, win 4, 5, 6 games, right? You want to try to win every game, but that's probably the realistic outcome because you have a difficult schedule. You play the AFC West and then the NFC East. That's a very gauntlet of a schedule. So I think you just go ahead, take a quarterback next year. That's where I'm at. And in the Raiders, who are transitioning, who are going to be taking quarterback with Fernando Mendoza, number one, I think you go offense in the draft. O-line, receiver, I think all very valuable. And it's not just to help Mendoza, it's to help Ashton Jeanty as well, who's a superstar back, who had a great rookie season at moments, but struggled because he had a bad offensive line. So I think he improved the O-line here, right? I think Brock Bowers at tight end, is a very great player, but he could produce probably more with other players around him, right? Maybe a Omar Cooper or Righteous Rat or a Chris Brazal, maybe Jordan Tyson. There's a lot of receiving names you really like. I think this team should also trade away Max Crosby. So, I think the Raiders, yes, their defense needs help. I'll be the first one to say it. But at the end of the day, I really think you got to make things looking good with Fernando Mendoza. Get this offense going right, and then you can continue to build around the defense. Because I think if you come out there and Mendoza looks and the offense isn't really there, especially when you hire an offensive coach in Clint Kubiak, there's going to be alarm sounds with the Raiders. And the Raiders have really not had a great season in the past couple of years. It's just been so much inconsistencies, and it's not that excitement. And I think that if you really go offense, you really build this thing, that's the right way to do it. Then you have Seahawks, Chargers here in the top tier. Seattle might surprise people, and I can see that of why they're not lower. I think they've just shown that they've developed talent very well. I mean, Nick Emmanwori, looking at him last year, he was a rookie this past season. He was awesome. He was a big reason why that team got to the Super Bowl, right, and was ultimately able to win it. Look at Gray Zabel, the rookie that they developed. I think Sam Darnold bringing him in was a really good in-house development. I think the Seahawks still have a lot of staples on their team that I don't think there's someone you need to go out and get. My thing before this season was you need an edge rusher, but Mike McDonald said, hey, I'm an amazing coach. I can go ahead and create edge pressure. And I think, too, the Seahawks are going to be really good for a couple years to come. I don't think this is kind of just a one-year deal. I think they're going to be contenders for at least, 5, 6 years, honestly. I look at the Rams. Sean McVay was hired in 2017. We're in 2025, still talking about how great the Rams are with McVay. And you look at the Seahawks, Mike McDonald, I think, is very much a lot like Sean McVay. And then the other thing, too, Seattle here, is that I think, you don't want to trade away these assets here in the draft or spend a ton of money because I don't want this team to go all in when they could just ride the long term very well. It's worked out very well for the Rams to go all in, and they've had success, but not every team's the same. So I think with Seattle, they're a team that, can just continue to build things up. I think the coaching is really a big part of their identity, and I think a lot of that is just taking the players they want. That's the other thing, too. I think Seattle has shown that they like certain people that fit their scheme. They're not just, hey, we'll take anyone. They're very specific, and I like that. Then you have the Chargers here. This was a difficult one, to be honest, because you bring in Mike McDaniel's OC, so it's like, hey, should we go for it? Because Mike McDaniel, not to be confused with Mike McDonald, Mike McDaniel, OC of the Chargers, former Dolphins head coach, there's a chance, that Mike McDaniel's out within a year, and I do think there's a chance you could say, hey, let's go on in for the Chargers. And I did consider putting them in the same tier as the Niners and Broncos. However, I do kind of push back with that for two reasons. Number one, you're in a tough division, right? I think the Broncos are going to be very nice this season. The Chiefs, I think, could be back to form. Also think, too, the Chargers have just shown to have injury issues. I hate to bring this up, but it's something that's been consistent with them. And I just don't want this to be a case where the Chargers go all in. They say, hey, want to go. This is our year, right? And then nothing or an injury happens and kind of derails the whole thing. I think this is a team that continues to just build up what they have, that Jim Harbaugh culture, get in the playoffs, win a game. Let's get things on track before we really get things kind of going all crazy with trades and whatnot. So that's what I have here for these teams. I think all of these teams are very interesting of how do they approach stuff, right? And I think these West divisions, we could see maybe the next Super Bowl on screen. Okay, let's go ahead here to the NFC North. A bit smaller here because we have teams in a couple of rows. And this one I think I'm going to go a bit quicker with. We'll just start with the Lions. The only team will go big or go home. This team just has a lot of players to pay in the upcoming years. You have Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Aiden Hutchinson, Jared Goff. So many guys are going to have to pay that you kind of have to go and win now. And I think the Lions, too, that this team has a very physical style of play. The Dan Campbell Lions, at times I've shown in recent NFL history to now be sustainable for long periods of times. I'm going to give you two examples, the Jets and the Niners. The Niners in the 2010 to 13 season, it was 11, in 2011, 2012, 2013, under Jim Harbaugh, with an excellent run-heavy, physical team. They made the Super Bowl once. They made the NFC title game the other 3 years. And they were a really great team, but things kind of broke away. Now, part of that was because Jim Harbaugh got fired, but because of injuries. And then you look at the New York Jets in 2009 and 2010, great defense, run-heavy team. You had Darrelle Revis at corner. You had Nick Mangold on that team. Rest in peace to him. You had a really just great kind of grinded-out team. Yeah, really great seasons in 2009 and 2010, but then things kind of fall apart because due to injury and whatnot. And I just think the point is these sometimes tougher physical teams, injuries will hit them. And with the Lions, we've seen that a bit, unfortunately. That's just maybe a consequence of that play style. That's why you have this window and you got to hit it now. I would love Max Crosby here. Denzel Ward at cornerback I think would be amazing for this team. But yeah, you have this window and I think you just go for it now. And I think the Lions are coming off a disappointing year. I'm not too much like the sky is falling, but I think the Lions, My thing was, could this team maybe be the next Mike Tomlin Steelers or the John Harbaugh Ravens or whatnot, where you're competitive, a 10, 11 win team for 12 seasons or whatnot? I just don't know if that's the case with Detroit. I love Dan Campbell, but there are things with the injuries and whatnot. So I would go big if I'm the Lions. Then you have their NFC North rivals, the Bears, and next to them, the AFC North Ravens, and go for it if it is right. With the Ravens, for me, I think the Ravens are going to be really good next year, or 2027. You bring in Jesse Minter as head coach. I think that he's going to do a pretty good job this year, but I think next year this team's really going to get elevated. You look at Mike McDonald with the Seahawks. His first year was pretty good, and then the second year they win the Super Bowl, right? Look at DeMeco Ryans with the Texans. First year pretty good, second year really great defense, right? Sometimes it's that second year where the defense really elevates. So I think the first year under Jesse Minter might just be a pretty great season, but not that year. But if you're at the trade deadline or if you're at the trade deadline, if you're looking here at the Ravens, if you're in the offseason, right, and you say, hey, there's a player we really like in the draft we want to trade up, or there's a player in free agency that we think can contribute long term, go ahead and get them. But I think going to be pretty great in 2027. But if you want to start that now and you think, hey, we have something special, go for it. I also think, too, there's a bit more of a window with Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar still has a lot of elite years left at quarterback. And speaking of quarterback, you have Caleb Williams with the Bears here. I think him and Ben Johnson, the head coach of the Bears, are just going to do great things. I really like the way the Bears are built up here. I did put them in this trade because I could see a world where this team does say, hey, we really like where things are at. We have Caleb Williams on the rookie contract. That is something to mention here. And that this team could kind of approach like they did with like how the Rams did. You look at the LA Rams, where in 2018 they went all out. That was year 2 of Jared Goff and Sean McVay. And I've kind of compared this Bears team to that Rams unit. So if the Bears this year in year 2 of Williams and Johnson, it would be year 3 for Williams, but year 2 of that pairing, if they say, hey, there's a guy we like, go for, like Max Crosby, I think could be here. I don't think it's that urgent where they need to be in the Lions tier, but I think it's something to mention. And you have the Vikings, Bengals, and Browns. These are all three kind of weird teams. They're all kind of different levels of where they're in the NFL, but they're here. Minnesota, there's questions about the quarterback, but I really just think that you got to make your money in the draft. This team's had a very up and down draft reputation, and I think that there's a lot of new pieces that could potentially be coming in. Aaron Jones, your running back, and Harrison Smith, your safety, I think are retiring or they're going to be off the team, right? So you'll get possibly a new running back or a safety. You look at that. I just think, too, this Vikings roster is really good, but there is some pieces that are aging. So I really think you want to look at the Vikings and say, who do we have for this next kind of couple years that we can get excited about? You still have guys like Justin Jefferson, who I think is the best receiver in the NFL. I really love Andrew Van Ginkel on the team. He's a really good defensive player, great with edge rushing. Him and Brian Flores have a great mind meld. I think Byron Murphy's a great cornerback, right? There are good pieces with the Vikings. I'm not going to sit here and lie, but I really think that the Vikings here are a team that just really needs to focus on, okay, who are these next couple pieces here? Who can we get coming into this team that we can really get excited about and kind of find those new core pieces? I know there's questions about, can J.J. McCarthy be the guy here? Can he be that person or not? And I think those are very valid questions. But I also think, too, there's the rest of the roster, right? So it's important to focus on the quarterback. You also do want to see just what goes on with this team as a whole. Then you have the Bengals here. You got to really just build with this offensive line and the defense in the draft. Draft well, get guys here. You're picking, I believe, number 10. If you want to trade back, okay, really just go with defensive-heavy assets. It's really as simple as it gets for Cincinnati. This might be one of the quicker teams I talk about, but I think everyone kind of agrees that's where they should be, and that's where I have them at. Then you have the Browns here as well. They drafted very well last year. Go ahead and do that this year. Who should they go for? I think you can make an argument in a couple of cases here. You could go receiver. I think that's a big need. Mekhi Lemon, I would love here. Cardinal Tate would be cool as well, staying in state. I think another edge rusher to pair with Myles Garrett could be potentially deadly. If you pair up Ruben Bain and Myles Garrett, oh, wow. You can just go a lot of positions for the Browns. But that's where I'm at here with Cleveland. Then you have the Packers and Steelers. These are very interesting teams in the continuing to build up team tier. Bit of a tongue twister. With Green Bay, they don't have a first-round pick, so that's partially why they're here. Also think too, there's an argument to be made if Micah Parsons is healthy, that they maybe go ahead and make, a deep playoff run last year. So I think it's just get healthy, get Tucker Kraft the tight end back, and just see where things are at here. I think the Jordan Love, Matt LaFleur window, I think, is wider than people think. Then you have the Steelers here as well. New coach with Mike McCarthy. I just think you want to get things established here as well. I don't know. I think the Steelers are a weird team because I don't think you should be aggressive. And I'm like, make your money in the draft, but I'm like, I don't know. Like, you could maybe put them there, but I think it's just kind of figuring things out, tooling things, kind of from a internal perspective. Steelers are a very unique team, and I think this North Division as a whole is very unique. I think there's a lot of teams on different levels, on different areas. There's a lot of question marks with these teams, and I think it'll just be fun. I think the North Division was very interesting last year, and I think it's gonna be interesting to see how they kind of rebound. Alrighty, time for the East here. Go big or go home. Eagles, Bills, Patriots here. In terms of Philadelphia, you still have a lot of players on this team that you really like, and you still have Nick Sirianni, you still have Jalen Hurts. We don't know about the future, but I think as long as you're here, you try to go big. And I think that whenever this Eagles team has gone big, we've seen it work out. They trade for A.J. Brown in 2022 draft. They make the Super Bowl the following season. 2024, they're bringing Saquon Super Bowl. Yes, Howie Roseman makes a lot of good plays, but I just want this team to go big. And then the Patriots as well. I was very interested to see where I put this team because a couple of weeks ago, if this was week 7, I would have said, hey, this team should maybe make your money in the draft or be a lower tier. But I think the fact that they got to the Super Bowl, you have Drake May on the rookie contract, really go for it here. I do think that this team as well has more established building blocks that you can really build around. Christian Gonzalez is amazing at corner. Milton Williams, Caleb Von Chason, they have more of those guys here. I know a lot of people have said, hey, you don't want to be like the Commanders, where the Commanders were a team who really kind of went in and when they should have waited. And I do understand that, and I used to have that belief, but I think the fact that the Patriots got to the Super Bowl really shows that this team is special. I think Mike Vrabel is an excellent coach. Drake May, I think, can really achieve special stuff. So go ahead and do it and try to hit this window. And then you have the Bills as well. My main thing is that you have Jim Leonard as defensive coordinator from the Broncos. I do not know how far or how long Leonard's going to be with this unit. Appreciate why you have him. I think this defense and offense could be both top 10 for the Bills. Great. Make those moves. Go for it. Then with the Cowboys above them, and go for it if it's right. I think with the Cowboys that there's a lot of stuff to love about the offense. Dak at quarterback, great receiving core. Good running game. I like how they re-signed Javonte Williams. That was a good move. I think the defense under Christian Parker, who is from the Eagles, as a new defensive coordinator, could be better here. I do think with Dallas, it's just seeing how the window is. If there's a player we like, go for it. If not, then that's okay. I think this is a team that I know a lot of people talk about where are the Cowboys at. I still like this Dallas team, I think, more than most, but I don't think they should buy in. But I think they should just see if there's a player that they like. And you have the Commanders and Dolphins make your money in the draft. Really, the case for both of them is that you're kind of going into an era where you really need to find new pieces of the team. And it's different. The Commanders, you have Jane Daniels, who's a great quarterback. The Dolphins, you are trying to figure that out. But you both have defensive-minded guys. I think both of them need to say, hey, who are the guys on this team who can really, really make, these teams, worthy of building up. And especially Miami in this category, I think really fits. I think the Dolphins are a team that under Jeff Hafley, the head coach, and Johnny Eric Sullivan, GM, I love both of those moves. That I think they're a team that's going to really prioritize on maybe trading back. I could see that. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins walk out with like 8 or 9 rookies, and whoever fits that scheme, I think could be really great for them. It reminds me kind of what the Seahawks did, where they really like to try to find those scheme-dependent guys, and I think that's very good. I think corner could be very fun. Mansell Delane, Keith Abney, I think could be some options. An edge rusher here. Do you give me a David Bailey? That would be fun, right? Just some names to kind of consider here. Then you have the Commanders, like I said, kind of the same deal. Caleb Downs, I know, has been talked about there, the safety out of Iowa. I would love that. I think that would be a really good move. I think he would really fit that well. So that's who I have on kind of that frontier. Then the Giants and Jets, very kind of interesting pair of teams. With the Jets here, it's just so weird. You have Aaron Glenn for year 2, and I still like Aaron Glenn, but it's like, where's this at? He has a brand new coaching staff. It's just very odd. I don't think you should buy in at all. And I'm like, make your money in the draft. It's weird, though, because it's like, then it's kind of like, what's the future, right? Is it Aaron Glenn? Is it not? So just a very odd team. And then the Giants here, you hire John Harbaugh. Yes, obviously you want to draft well under him, but you want to get this staff figured out and just get this team healthy. So that's the Eastern divisions. Very interesting to see kind of where these teams end up here. I could kind of see this going a couple of ways. I could see this being status quo, where the Eagles, Bills, Patriots are the best teams, but I could see the Giants having nice kind of a surprise season. You just never know where things go here in the NFL. And then we have the South to end things here. We have the Bucks at the bottom. I think that there's an argument to be made that this team is too high on the list. They should be lower. The Buccaneers, and go big or go home. It's like, kind of, why are they here? My thing is that you're in a division that is more winnable than the others. I also think, too, with the Buccaneers, you have a team that, if Mike Evans comes back, is that his last season? What's the deal for Lavonte David here? And I think, too, the biggest thing is you could say, well, Todd Bowles could be fired after this year. Why should they go in now? I think the GM, Jason Light, is going to stay. So I think Jason Light stays, tries to go on with Todd Bowles. If that doesn't work out, they move on from him. They bring in a new guy. But I think also, too, Jason Light has proved to draft very well in later rounds. So if you give up a first-round pick, I would love a Max Crosby here or whatever. They have shown that they can assemble stuff late. So even if they don't have a first or second rounder, they can still kind of get some good players on that team. Very impressed with the Bucks here. Then you have the Panthers and Texans. This is a very fun kind of duo here. You have the Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud teams, right? Kind of that 2023 QB class. With Carolina, I was interested to see where I put them. I originally had them at the top of continuing to build up the team, but I don't know, man. I'm kind of interested where it's like you made the playoffs last year, and the fact is that they almost beat the Rams in the wild card round is very interesting. They play that team very close, and I like the offense. You have Ted McMillan, you have Jalen Coker, who I think is super underrated. Jalen Coker. You have a great old line. You have a good running game. What else is there to build up with? I think it's more of the defense. If there's a defensive player that becomes available, you could go buy in, and this team could get really interesting really quick. Also, thinking to running the ball, play great defense. That's the recipe for success we've seen in the NFL. With a quarterback that has kind of some question marks, right? If you look at the Seahawks last year going in, how many people would have said, hey, this Seahawks team is going to make the Super Bowl? I like Seattle, but I have my questions about them, right? There's questions around Sam Darnold. The year before that, when the Eagles won it, there's questions around Jalen Hurts. So it wouldn't shock me, and honestly, if the Panthers would have a very good season. I think go for it if it's right. Texans here. I like this team a lot defensively. I think as long as you have DeMeco Ryans, Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, Danielle Hunter might retire in like 3 years, so more so as long as you have DeMeco and Will here. I think that you should continue to just go for it if it's right. If the asking point is there, maybe there's someone on the offensive line or someone here that you go for. And I also think too, Carolina and Houston, like if you just let this season go and don't make any moves, I think it'll be a good team, right? I think the Texans probably win 10, 11 games. Panthers probably win around that amount. They do have a difficult schedule, but possibly. But if the price is there, go for it. But you don't have to go all in, right? There's going to be more years. Then you have the Saints and Titans and make your money in the draft. Very simple. You have year two quarterbacks here, Tyler Shook and Cam Ward. I think both of them have good coaching staffs. Just wait for this team to develop. I don't want this team to go all in on free agency and be like, whoa, kind of build it up organically. In terms of draft strategies for the teams, I don't have particular ones. I think best play available. I think Titans, you could maybe look for a receiver round one, but you could go at round two. This is a very interesting draft class because of what's deep, what's not. But I think both of these teams are kind of best player available. I know, for me personally, I think both of these teams could be playoff teams next year. But for me, I would more so just kind of draft well this season and maybe say next year, if we're in week 8 and both of these teams are like having a very good record, then you can go in at the trade deadline. But I think for this offseason, I'll just kind of let the quarterbacks develop, let these coaches, work their magic. And then you have the final teams is the continue to build up teams in the top here. We have the Falcons, Jaguars, Colts here. Kind of simple for all three of them in a sense. All of them do not have a first-round pick, so no first-round picks with the Falcons, Jaguars, or Colts. Colts, I think you just kind of wait to see how things go with Daniel Jones, get him healthy, really focus on his rehab. I think get the defense a bit better, see where things go, and, try to make another run at it. Jaguars just continue to develop a lot of this talent in house. I really like Liam Cohen as head coach. I think the Jags too. That this team kind of is going to be consistently pretty great for a couple years. I know your coordinators might leave this following season, Udinski and Campanelli. I do understand that at the end of the day. But also too, like I think Cohen has, kind of stuff in his bag. And the other thing too is I do want to mention this, that I'm not completely sold on Trevor Lawrence. And then I think that, you know, yes, he looked really good during the second half of this past season. That's awesome. But there's a couple questions. And I do see a world, I don't know how this is likely, that maybe the Jaguars move on from Trevor Lawrence. Maybe the second half of last season was a facade and Lawrence is just solid, but maybe, more so kind of solid and great. And the Jaguars trade him and they get another quarterback, right? Liam Cohen did not draft Trevor Lawrence. Now, the two seem to pair great, but there is kind of a case where that could happen. I think the Jaguars just continue to build it up, really work on Trevor Lawrence, also figure out what's going on with Travis Hunter. Is he corner? Is he receiver? Get Brian Thomas going. Get him healthy. I would keep Brian Thomas Jr. for another year. I would. Just kind of build up the morale and kind of figure things out. And then you look at the Falcons here. They're dealing with some legal issues. They are releasing Kirk Cousins, which is interesting. But you bring in Kevin Stefanski as a new head coach. You bring in Matt Ryan, a new president of operations. You bring in a new GM with Ian Cunningham. Good move, by the way. I don't know I've really discussed Ian Cunningham to the Falcons. Good stuff. I think he did some good work in Chicago. But yeah, I think the Falcons, you just kind of want to build things up and see how they go, right? Kind of take this year as maybe an introductory year. Is Penix the guy in Atlanta? Who knows? Hopefully he can get healthy. But just kind of get things going year one. And that'll do it, everyone, for today's episode. That was really fun to do, and I also like doing these by division here. I think that worked out very well. Let me know what you all think the teams, how should they attack the offseason. This was really fun. Until then, take care.